Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the budget workshop for 2023-24, revenues and appropriations. Will we all please rise for the flag salute?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Palladino, can you please call the roll?
Sure, Madam Vice President. Trustee Dattis.
Here.
Trustee Darrow.
Here.
Trustee Darrow.
Here.
Trustee Velez.
Here.
Trustee Williams.
Here.
Vice President Ben-Ami.
Here.
President Munoz.
And we're going to turn over the meeting to Dr. Tomko so he could discuss this budget workshop for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Good evening, everyone at home watching, everyone in the crowd. It's great to see everyone. This evening, this workshop started several years ago. The board wanted a process where they can kind of discuss some of the budgetary items and budgetary concerns, and basically that's why we're here. We're going to do very quickly is, I just want to talk about one thing with regard to the budget. The budget was submitted in a timely manner with regard to a technical review, and that's basically how the process works. We put a budget together, we submit it to the county for technical review, they send it back to us whether it's approved or not, which this year it was. We have a secondary issue here in Belleville because we still are under the state monitor rule. We have to now then put our budget through a state process as well. That also came back in agreement with the technical numbers, and now here we are, what I like to call scrubbing the data and trying to get the most use out of the tax dollar and out of the funding that's provided. But there's a few things I want to talk about that we always bring up every year, individuals in the community, stakeholders, they're aware of all these different issues. However, some of these things become misnomers or hyperbole or exaggeration, different things. So tonight is one of our ways of just kind of putting everything at ease, and we're going to talk about some of that. So what we did up here is we're providing you tonight with just one snapshot or one slide of what I think is the most important thing to talk about. Jeff, can you give me this microphone, please? Because I think there's a misconception out there. It's not to disparage anyone. I think it's perception. Right? It's a common perception that. Thank you very much. That for some reason the Belleville Board of Education and the school district, were like the winner of this huge lottery where the governor and the legislature just said, hey, let's give Belleville an extra $11 million in aid. That's really not how it works. I wish it was. I wish it was quote unquote free money or aid money, which, as we always say, tax money is tax money, right? So it doesn't really matter where it comes from, okay? But this is not extra money. Okay, the $10.5 million, Mr. Palladino, what's the exact number of that extra aid, do we know?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get into that in a second, so we have it here. Was projected in a formula for a reason. Okay, there was a reason why we got this, and as we are absolutely excited about getting this money, it's imperative that we allow you as a taxpayer, parents, stakeholders, those individuals who also scrub the data on their own at home, right, and are here tonight to talk about it when they get up at the podium. It's important that you understand where every dollar of that extra aid is allotted or where it will go to as we propose this budget to the board. And it was an expectation of us, of what we were going to do. And we were very nervous about not getting this money, to be honest with you. So all we did was just put basically the newest budget impacts, okay, that were unforeseen things. There was one thing that was foreseen that we can kind of work on, which created this new tax levy increase that we're at right now at the technical review, as we're still working on this through committees with the board. So as you see, there are things, there are absolute increases here that you're probably not aware of because you're not thinking of it. Many people are just saying, hey, it's $11 million, this is going to offset the tax levy. Yeah, it is. I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you what the governor was talking about when he said this extra aid is going to help you offset your tax levy. Imagine we didn't get the $13 million. You know where we would be? We would be in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. Right? So, yes, this does offset a lot of what that tax levy should be or would be. So here are some of those things that add up to $13.2 million of new monies that need to be found in this year's budget. Preschool disabled budget not included in the PEA funds. Okay, so this has to do with things that aren't in the funding. That's $750,000. RTI intervention is no longer covered in the ARP funds, or that money that we got, the not rescue money, the money that we got from COVID, we call it COVID money, to set up for learning loss. Okay, as we continue to talk about test scores, and it's all we always hear about, even though I don't believe the aggregate should be the growth of a child, but we can argue about that at another time. We're constantly talking about having kids do better. That's why we're here, right? So RTI was put in place. We had basic skills before that. RTI's response to interventions. Our kids are responded to it extremely well. We put all the money that we needed to into that. We were given by the state to take care of that learning loss. You all remember this. Well, guess what? Money's no longer there, so now we have to kind of come up with it. So that's $750,000. The expansion of the athletic facility is $500,000. That's the new indoor athletic facility for the drones, ROTC area, etc. That's something that the board and the administration are talking about possibly removing. So that's one area that can be removed. However, we put it in there for now because that was one of the talks of the board when we first started doing these things. Increase in security guards, the amount just to stay comparable to some of the other monies of different districts or municipalities, and more guards needed. First payment of the bond with the township is $2 million. That's for the middle school annex. We knew that was coming as well. So that's in the impacts the budget. Special ed transportation costs, increases in costs, new costs. You can't find bus drivers, busing is an issue. Well, guess what? The demand goes up, right? So everyone is getting, every superintendent I've spoken to is getting hit with these costs. We're anticipating $1.5 million. I think that's a low number, but that's the number that we were kind of giving. I don't think that's conservative. I think that's going to get us in trouble, but that's the only way we can get into this $13 million. Health benefit and Social Security increases are $2 million. If we rewind the tape and go back a few years to budget workshops, people in the audience and board members, both of those stakeholder groups demanded that the administration and Mr. Egan, the state monitor who's watching tonight, cut that line. Too much was in there, so we cut it. We cut it a few times. Well, guess what? Like we said, it's coming back to bite us now. What was the increase, Matt? 16%. 15% increase January. The teachers are feeling it, the administrators are feeling it, everyone's feeling it in their pocket, so is the board share. But we also now have to make up from all the cuts that we recall several years ago. Let's think about those cuts we made several years ago. We like talking about compounded interest and all those other things. Well, let's make sure we talk about that as we make these cuts, how they're coming back now to hurt the board, and that's why that's in here. Out-of-district tuition costs. That's for students that cannot be part of the least restricted environment. We do an incredible job keeping students into programs here. We've increased programs. We have Bucks program. We have the two houses. We do an excellent job. Our numbers are inflating. Our enrollment since September, district-wide, is up 4% since September, okay, in district. So these are students that we cannot take care of here for whatever reason. So another $500,000 in those costs. Contractual increases, we're being conservative there because we don't know what the increases are for the bargaining units. We know the paras are extremely underpaid. We're working with them right now to try to keep our paras because they're, you know, just as or as important as our teachers, right, in there. And again, we can't keep them here because just neighboring districts are paying $7, $8, $10 an hour more. So that's an issue. We really don't know those costs because we're still negotiating, but just the teacher's contract, the increment alone, and if you know what negotiations are, the increment alone means that if we did nothing, we just moved everybody one step, the increment alone is 2.4%. Just the increment, before we even talk. So again, that's not giving up anything, that's a scattergram, that's public, so all you have to do is look at some of the numbers. I'm sorry, 2.8, I misspoke, 2.8, just the increment alone. So we're being very conservative here with 2.7. I don't know, that gets me nervous too. Normal budget increases, just like your utilities and your supplies and everything's going up, but you can't buy food. Everything goes up here too. Everything, pencils, lights. Everybody got hit with the water bill. Guess what? Our water isn't free either. Okay? So all those impacts, $13.282 million generated. So that's where we took that extra aid money that everybody thought was just kind of going in the pockets, and that's how we offset it. All right? So that's where we're at. The state aid increase was $10.432 million, the $2.8 million in the tax levy. So in order to get there where we got to zero, right, so we could submit it for a technical review, we had to use all of our bank, is it all of our bank cap? We've used all of our bank cap. So every year you don't use your allotted percentage, you could bank that. There's some waivers and whatnot for enrollment, transportation costs, special education, etc. They used to be called SGLAs. That's where we need to be to get to zero. 6.41%. The average impact on a home assessed is about $239. What's the home assessment? Is it 280? 278,700. So if your home is assessed, not what it's worth, if it's assessed, that's 278,700. The impact that we're presenting to the board for the technical review is $239. So, say again? 250. Where was 239? Oh, I'm sorry. We said it's 256. My apologies. We were talking to Ms. Jocko about that before. 256 on that assessment. And that's where we're at. So, I'm going to obviously turn it back over now to Madam Vice President. And if the board has any questions or concerns, that's basically all I really wanted to talk about tonight. Next week on Monday night will be the hearing where, that's the public review of the actual changes. Mr. Palladino and I now are going to sit in committee with the board or do some work over phone and text and whatnot, to try to scrub this, to get this down as low as we can. So that's our next week. Okay? Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tomko. So yes, this is a workshop. So if any board members would like to comment, I would like to hear your comments first, and then we'll open it up to the public and give you folks, by raising your hand, we'll call you up to the podium. And you can have a couple of comments, too, about Dr. Tomko's budget presentation. So anyone from the board want to make any comments on the presentation or just anything in general about the budget for 2023-2024 school year? No?
Madam Vice President, I do have some questions.
Okay, Trustee Jocko?
Thank you. I was listening just like everyone else was, and I had 2 questions or comments, concerns. Regarding the expansion of the athletic facility, it says drone room, ROTC area, etc. The etc. is not clear, so I would really need to be informed in detail what the etc. means, because
if we're gonna spend $500,000 on that, I really would like more information. I know that the athletic facility has sponsorship availabilities where the community or vendors or businesses can sponsor and can put their logo in the TV there or in the facility. And now the community might know, if they didn't know before, any donations or sponsorship can be done to promote your business and at the same time alleviate some costs. I know that some businesses and community, that's part of community engagements and the community outreach, and helps at the same time our students. So that number, $500,000 for that, leaves me a little bit concerned because I don't know what the et cetera is, and I'm sure it's great ideas because Dr. Tomko is very innovative. But at the same time, is that a necessity? Is that a priority? Especially ROTC, for example, we have a nice gym, we have nice fields at school number 8 that we could use to facilitate ROTC in the summer. And if it's not weather permitting, I don't know, the gym I would think would be a great place. But to expand so quickly, to expand for $500,000 right now, I think, just like I know that I always compare here to my home, I would love to install an indoor pool in my house right now. My means doesn't let me, right? So for the time being, I could go outside, lay down my yoga mat, do some exercise, etc. in the meantime. So I can afford the yoga mat for now. The pool, I dream about later. So the etc. is more of, is it a necessity? I know, trust me, I would, if I had $1 million, you guys would have it, because I would share it, because I love our community and I want our kids to have everything. So that is a question/concern of exactly what is the goal within the means. Can that just be on the back burner for now? And then in the future, when we have more wiggle room, we can be far more innovative with the athletic facility. Right now, we just got the athletic facility. Let's enjoy what we just got. That's how I'm feeling about that. After that, the other part says increase in security guards, another $500,000. This is a high increase amount. I haven't seen any data to confirm that our buildings or our grounds are so unsafe where we need to invest that much. I know that we have security in our buildings and our facilities, and what we had, I thought, was sufficient. But if it's extra, I really need to know in detail again how far we're going to extend that dollar. And I think that if I had more information, I could make more of an educated decision. But at the same time, it's a lot of money. So those are my 2 concerns regarding the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joppa. Okay, so we're going to open it up to the audience. If you'd like to come up and make comments with regards to the presentation, please keep the comments to 5 minutes. Just raise your hand, we'll call you up, and you can comment whatever you like to comment. So does anyone want to comment first? Yes. Please come to the podium, state your name.
Good evening, Vincent, Frank, and Tony. First of all, it's obvious when you're talking millions of dollars like this to come here stack of paper like this and 10 minutes later be able to intelligently ask any question whatsoever. That is absolutely ludicrous. Some of these things on that list, which I didn't get a printed list of that, it's up on the board there. But I agree with Trustee Jacko, the athletic facility, number one, the rent in there, that should have never been built. If you want to build something like that, your primary goal and primary mission is education first. That would have been, and I would have supported, a lovely workshop or auto mechanic school down there. It's down in the valley, it's an industrial area, and our kids would have benefited by that. I won't comment any further beyond the Jacko on the increased security guard. That's a huge sum. But I got to take exception to Dr. Tomko saying, let's look at all the cuts we've made over the years. I save all my tax bills, and I come to all these budget hearings, I don't see any cuts. If he's referring to the little gimmick that a lot of governing bodies and Board of Education do, they put out a proposed budget. And then, after they come back, they cut a few percentage points off it, and then they claim they cut spending. They didn't cut spending. The budget has gone up every year, and I continue to say, I'm ashamed that Mr. Tomko keeps saying, we're doing more with less. He has never, ever had less in his 7 or 8 years. So I take exception to that. Enrollment up 4%. How many pupils do we have in our school system?
A little over 5,000. A little over 5,000.
5,000. The other thing, some of these things, you know, we hear, you did an outdoor classroom, and it was supposed to be paid by donations. As far as I've heard from someone who paid attention, I know that it's been totally paid by donations, or the taxpayers are paying for that. These are things that are beyond there. The governor said the extra aid, this is what Dr. Tomko said, he quoted, he said the governor said the extra aid will help cut tax increase. First of all, that's not happening, obviously. If our tax is going up, an average of $256, the biggest tax increase we've seen in a while. And also, how do you trust the governor? I don't know if any of you, we just got our 1,500 or 1,600, whatever people got and all that, and he's saying he was the guy that gave it to us. That's tax dollars because he overtaxed us. He claimed there was going to be a $9 billion deficit in the budget 2 years ago, which turned out to be untrue. We actually had a $9 billion surplus, and now he's saying this is given to us. If he really wanted to do something to help the taxpayers, he would have cut the sales tax 1 or 2%. That's permanent, not this one-time $1,500, which the average person will spend paying off their credit card to some extent and all that. And it's not his money, and it's our tax dollars. Like I said, I'm at a loss to question because I don't have it. The other thing I say to you trustees, a little younger than me, years ago the entire budget would be printed in the newspaper. 4 or 5 complete big pages, every single line item, every single thing, and it was delineated real nice and clear. Program, teachers' salaries, other expenses in detail. Over the years, and to no extent, no fault of local budgets, the state, in connection with the Education Law Center, wanted to cut the public out of the dialogue. So what they did, they got this convoluted budget with all these other things where you don't see the clear the way the budget was clearly presented years ago, where you can look at it, really understand exactly this part of the budget, this part of the budget, and now we've got this convoluted thing. So, in summation, I'm asking you trustees to really take a look at this, because, and I've accused Dr. Tomko over the years, and it comes through by Eastern College and the so-called parking deck we have. In order to get all that millions in the capital fund, he had to over-budget many line items to get that surplus. So that's again. So this budget, you know, the other thing is, I don't understand. We got a 2% cap on budgets, and we're going up 6.41%. But I'm asking you, like I said, for many years, he's been over-budgeting tons of accounts. That's how he came up with that billions of dollars in the capital reserve funds, which denied the citizens of Belleville the right to approve or disapprove of all this building and all that. If you want to build that facility down there, you want to expand the middle school, that should have gone to the public. The public should have the right, but you shrewdly over budget, you transfer it to the capital fund, and then you go and say you have to get. This is the exact opposite that Dr. Tomko told me that they couldn't buy School 1. He said, we can't buy the School 1 property, and I brought the statute saying you can condemn it. He said, no, we would have to have the money in the budget, and we don't have it. But all of a sudden, we come up with 10 million. Where did it come from? So I ask you trustees, some of you I think are really want to do a good job for the citizens, please, not only sharpen his pencil, cut it down from 8 inches down to 2 or something, because something's wrong.
Yes.
And we're going to pay when the state gets in trouble, which it did about 14 years ago.
We are.
The state aid
We're
was
working
cut.
on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to comment? Okay. Dr. Tomko.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice President. I just wanted to say a few things with regard to Mr. Frantantoni's comments to clarify, because I don't know how else again, I started off because being here 8 years now, this is how it's gone every time we've done this. There's a lot of misconception, there's a lot of quote unquote, let's just call it fake news that's spewed at this podium. So let's make it very clear to everybody how this works. Okay, first of all, with this 6.47% tax increase, we're still approximately $4 million under adequacy. Okay? That means, to make it very clear to everybody, that means that the state is saying in order for us to be an adequate district with other districts, we need $4 million more into this budget. That's with 6.47%. So to say that we are doing more with less is an understatement. So I appreciate you always bringing that up. The cuts that I am talking about are not the cuts that Mr. Palladino and myself with Mr. Egan are going to present to this board on Monday. That is exactly correct. Mr. Frantantoni is correct. That's basically, you know, a trick. That's what that would be. For all of you to think that we are going to not sharpen our pencil this week would mean that you haven't been watching this for 8 years. So this is the technical review. This is what we need, and now we have to make some cuts. I don't know if that's going to be personnel. Ms. Jocko brought up the center, which was one of the board's pushes to try to expand this because it was such an incredible thing for, you know, the wellness of kids right after COVID who haven't talked to other kids in 2 years, you know, stuff like that that we don't think about. However, the cuts that I am talking about go back decades when townships did vote on budgets before the 2% cap. And then they would come out in droves and say, superintendents are spending too much money, shoot the budget down. And then it would go to the mayor and council, and the mayor and council would say in a back room, because I was in many back rooms, the mayor and council would say, well, we can't approve what you need because the town spoke. They voted no, we have to now cut you again. So not only were we cutting from the technical review already, right? Because I am telling you, we need 6.47% to be solvent right now with everything we're doing, okay? Not only did we cut within this week, but back in the day, the mayor and council then cut. I don't know who these people are or who they were. It's not important. Everybody did it, not just Belleville. But they cut it again. And then year after year after year, I don't even know if there was a budget passed here for a full decade. That adds up. And that put you into deficit. You could talk about all the things that happened here with the deficit, but it comes down to dollars and cents. It's basic mathematics. It's not really, it's really not, the mathematics isn't complicated. Okay? So the cuts that I am talking about are just like the cuts we made for the health benefits. A few years ago, Mr. Palladino put money in the line because that's what we were told by our brokers. Our brokers said, we've been to many meetings with the governor's office, Governor Christie, was it Governor Christie at the time? Or no, it was just when Murphy got in, and they said, you need to budget 15%. So Mr. Palladino, they told me to budget. I'm going to be careful and budget. And what did we do? No, it's too high, it's too high. So we cut, we took it out like we're going to do after tonight. We're going to take some out. It's dangerous. And now, when we get blasted with an increase, like everybody does, it comes back to bite us. Because every year when you take something out of a budget, you're not building a budget. You're not building it, you're taking it out. It has a very, very bad negative effect when you take money out. Okay, you can't sustain things. There is nothing in our lives that stays the same. Gas prices, chicken, everything that you do, right? Everything you do goes up. Same thing here. The school district doesn't, pay the same price every year for things. So to now cut things makes it very dangerous. So again, whether you think there should be more cuts or not, I wish we could get all the way down to zero. We're going to try. We're going to try to do that. But what I'm saying is it's not as easy as it seems. So those are the cuts we're talking about. We also need to talk about bank cap because it was just brought up. We need to understand what that means. Every year that we do not raise taxes to the 2% cap, we can bank that cap. That means we can put it in our pocket for a rainy day if you need it. You're allowed to do that. Because what the governor or the government says is, guess what? We know right now you're saving some money, but I think in a couple of years you might need it again because you made a bad decision. So we have 4.47 or whatever. What's our bank cap? What was it? How much over 2%? 4.4% over the last several years that we saved. We saved in raising taxes. Nobody mentions that part, right? That we're saying now, we saved it over those past 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years, that we need it now. We need it to get to zero. That's what bank cap is. That's how come you're allowed to raise it. That's why you're allowed to raise it as high as it is. And just to clarify, not to bring up School 1 again, because we've talked about this way too much, but to go back to purchasing that property again, and even eminent domain that property. When I first got here, we talked about it a lot. We did all of the research on it. Just to eminent domain that property was $4 million. $4 million. The mayor and council at the time were not bonding anything. You weren't even getting roads done. Okay, so bonding wasn't an issue there. Couldn't go off a referendum for that. Why? Because the first referendum, when boilers were breaking down and ceilings were falling and almost a condemned floor, we had groups of individuals from the town come out here saying, you don't need a referendum. Let Rich Henry and the guys do all the work. So we couldn't go off a referendum. You needed that money in capital reserve. At the time, we were just coming out of deficit. We were more solvent now. And I take exception to the fact that anybody would think that I was squandering or hiding money into a capital reserve account. That's the most preposterous thing I've ever heard of. Again, putting money away for capital improvements is what every homeowner should do. Or in 10 years, your house is going to fall down. So I don't know how else to say that. But those are some of the things that we continue to talk about. And every budget cycle, Mr. Palladino, for now 5 or 6 years now, and myself, we are extremely conservative with this. Some of the things that we add at direction of the board, some of the programs, and some of the other things that we have to do through unfunded or underfunded mandates, right, are things that are necessary. Every district's going through this stuff. Security was brought up here. We're not over-flooding this place with security guards. They are underpaid. They need a boost just like the paras do, and we need a few extra guards monitoring some of the areas. And again, we were just noticed in the School Board magazine for having just an incredible safety services program. So, I mean, I'm very proud of that. I know parents, when they drop their kids off, sometimes you don't really worry about math and spelling all the time. You say, you know what, I want to drop my kid off, I want to make sure I pick them up at the end of the day and they're okay, right? And I know our guards, they go through training. We have the best guards that I know of that we can get here, and they deserve to be compensated for what they do for our kids here. So that's the most important part. So again, just to mention some of that stuff. So I appreciate the time, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Dr. Tomko. Mr. Sheldon, please come up, state your name.
Mr. Sheldon, 47 Floyd Street. Let me start off by saying that once again I decry the fact that this meeting has been deliberately started at 5:30 p.m. You know that most stakeholders in this community are working 9 to 5 and would be extremely hard-pressed to come to a 5:30 meeting. All your regular meetings start at 7, but obviously this is a ploy on your part to diminish community turnout, participation, and by that token, mission accomplished. You didn't publish the appropriations and revenue sheets until Saturday morning, even though I've been asking for them for weeks now. And in so doing, you made the revenue sheet as an Excel spreadsheet, but you conveniently posted the appropriation sheet as a badly formatted PDF, which made it impossible initially to do any real analysis. And it was so badly formatted that some of the columns were spilled over to following pages. But putting that aside, I want to, just for the record, state that Governor Murphy is giving us an extra $10.4 million in state aid for the next academic year. Amongst all of the communities in Essex County, Belleville has the largest percentage increase. It's almost 24%. Governor Murphy has also made it abundantly clear every year when he addresses the State House in February with his budget that he's delivering on his promises he made when he first ran for governor, that he would eventually bring underfunded districts like Belleville to full funding. And by that measure, he is succeeding. Our state equalization aid now, with the $10.4 million increase, stands over $54 million. Governor Murphy also adds, and he makes this passionate plea every year before our legislators, he says that, make no doubt about it, every additional dollar in school aid for underfunded districts is one less dollar in local school property taxes. So even though he has increased, during the Christie administration, our state aid was frozen at $25 million. We are now at $54 million. That is supposed to have resulted in a reduction in our local school tax, but that obviously hasn't happened. But let me now turn my attention to some of the numbers that are on this screen. Let me start with the very first item, school disabled budget, not included within PEA funds, a $750,000 increase. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when Dr. Tomko was featured in the recent Ed Week article, he boasted on how the district had a fully funded preschool program and that we had received more than $16 million in aid. So, but here now suddenly we have a apparent deficit in the school budget or preschool budget, even though he recently said we were fully funded. By the way, Mr. Frantantoni asked about the school population. Dr. Tomko said we have about 5,000 students, but let's just clarify that. That 5,000 includes the 300 plus students that are now in our pre-K universe. Our actual K through 12 population is more like, what, 4,600, 4,700? But you can correct that number later on. I digress a little bit. Let me go down a little bit, down this list to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I hope all the trustees can see this or at least turn your head. I'm referring to first payment bond with the township, $2 million. Now, a couple weeks ago, the township introduced its preliminary budget for this year. They work on a regular calendar year. You have an academic year. Their year starts from January 1st through December 31st, whereas your year starts from July 1st through June 30th. but nevertheless, in the township's budget on page 16, they have anticipated revenues from the Board of Education in the amount of about $1.45 million. And that is the first bond payment. As I hope you all know, last year, the town hall acted on behalf of the board to secure an $11.9 million shared services bond ordinance, ostensibly to allow you to purchase the Eastern International College as the would-be Middle School South Annex, and to eventually create a municipal Board of Ed shared parking garage next to the middle school. But in any case, the town hall's own budget sheet says that they're receiving from you guys less than $1.5 million for that first payment with the bond. But yet, Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino have this nice round number of $2 million. I contend that that number has been artificially inflated to pad that particular line item, giving them right off the top here an extra $500,000 of play money for other purposes. Now, let's go down to the next item, increase in special aid transportation costs of $1.5 million. Over the course of the last couple of years, many of us have been questioning the purchase of so many properties in this township, which were always marked as expansion of living learning programs, that you were going to use those buildings to help our district's special education students, with the promises made by Dr. Tomko that with this expansion of programs, we would be bringing in students from other districts instead of sending our students out of district, which would have brought us an additional revenue stream. Furthermore, the reason for entering into the additional leases with Mr. Dorso and State Fair, where now the administrative offices are located in that complex, and you guys are spending upwards of $160,000 a month in rent for Mr. Dorso's property over the 30-year cycle. If all of the additional leases are approved, Mr. Dorso stands to make upwards of $100 million in leases, and at the end of that process, we won't have any new property to call our own. But I digress a little bit there. But nevertheless, the board moved its offices, the administrative offices, out of this building to Dorso's property so that, again, these living learning programs could be further expanded inside the confines of this building. So we had all of these rosy promises that with the purchases, with the lease agreements, we were going to greatly expand our special ed program, bringing in students from other districts, which would make our programs essentially self-funding. But no, lo and behold, now we have a $1.5 million increase in transportation costs to continue sending our students out of district. And by the way, anytime I see whole numbers like that, $2 million, $1.5 million, you're not seeing $1,722,812. When you see nice, rosy, round numbers like that, it should automatically raise some red flags. Let me continue down the list. Anticipated contractual increases of $2.729,485. Now, I didn't have much time over the weekend because I was involved with other legal matters involving the town hall, but when I scanned the appropriation sheet, at the very beginning of it, you have, let me just grab another sheet here, you have the teacher salaries for K through 12. And if you look down this list, some of the items actually have decreases. The one that has a significant increase, percentage increase, is the one for kindergarten, and it goes up 9%, but it only involves a nominal amount of $116,000. What I have to ask here is that while the current teacher's contract expires at June 30th, and I'm sure you're actively involved right now with negotiating the next 5-year contract, why don't you have, in the beginning of this appropriation sheet, properly reflected across the board, a 3% increase? Some of these line items have either 0 or a tiny fraction of a percent in salary increases. That makes no sense in light of what the teachers have been getting and will likely get with their new contract. The previous 5-year contract called for typically 3% annual increases. I don't see that reflected here, but yet somehow Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino have already discerned that the anticipated contractual increases, and the lion's share of that, of course, is represented by our teachers, is $2,729,485. There's a fundamental inconsistency here, with all things considered. And by the way, in 2020, when I sat on this board, I was the vice chair of the finance committee. Mr. Barrera was the chair. But when we had the public hearing in March of 2020, that was right after the COVID shut us down, so we were by ourselves in the cafeteria for that workshop, I pointed out the fact that under this initial section of the appropriation sheet, the teachers' salaries for that year had been increased by almost 12%. It was, I think, 11.75%, if I remember correctly, even though the teacher's contract for that year only included a 3% increase. But yet, Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino had included a nearly 12% increase in the item, which alone brought them an extra $1.7 million in revenue. So when I protested, when I screamed, "You're padding this line item," I got yelled back at by Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino, and especially Mr. Egan. "How dare you accuse us of padding line items? We would never do any such thing." But yet the following month, that we were in the main thrust of COVID, the following month in April 2020, Governor Murphy made an emergency address, specifically to school districts, and he said, "Look, guys, we don't know what the future is going to entail. We may have major financial problems." So he instructed all districts to begin cutting back various programs, including pre-K. And he said during that emergency address, he said, "It's well known among educators that numerous budget line items are padded." So while Governor Murphy admitted publicly that school districts play this financial game, when I said that much, I was a heretic. I was to be shunned. I was to be condemned. But you know, the proof is there in the pudding with what Governor Murphy said the following month.
Mr. Sheldon,
Yeah. I'll quickly finish now.
And I'm sure Dr. Tomko.
All right. I wanted to say one other thing about the increase in health benefits, which, let me just, where is it? $2 million, a nice whole number. Earlier tonight, Dr. Tomko said that the boards from the last few years cut health care benefits. That's not true. What I learned being on this board and going to all these NJSBA training sessions is that every district is told by the state each year, anticipate anywhere from an 8 to 12% increase in your healthcare costs. And so that's what BAs use as a benchmark to figure out what next year's increase should be to cover health insurance. What I did when I was finance chair and on the board the other 2 years was that we asked Mr. Palladino and Dr. Tomko, don't use the upper range, 12%. Why not use 10%? So when he says the previous boards cut health insurance increases, that's not true. All we did was we put some damper on the overall amount of the increase. But here again, you've got this very suspicious round off $2 million number for health insurance benefits. Now, as far as the athletic facility is concerned, something that Ms. Jocko brought up, when you guys were asked to approve that lease agreement, throughout the process, Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino kept telling us that the funding for this facility was going to be covered in its entirety through things like food service surpluses, through ESSER monies, through Title I funds. But now all of a sudden, you got locked into a 5-year lease agreement. And as I pointed out over and over again over the last few years, the reason why you guys are asked to do 5-year lease agreements is under state law. The moment a lease agreement becomes 5 years and 1 day, it's no longer your vote, your call. It has to go out to the voters for approval. So as long as Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino keep leases to 5 years or less, then you have sole discretion on its approval. But nevertheless, we were assured by the superintendent and the business administrator that the costs for the athletic facility on Portland Street were going to be covered through other means, through other, as Mr. Egan likes to say, other economies, budgetary economies. But now all of a sudden, you guys are being asked to cough up another $500,000 for the next year's operating budget, when we were led to believe, you and the community, that this was already going to be included within the existing framework of the district's budget. So this list here is once again so much game playing, obfuscation. It's the usual song and dance that Dr. Tomko gives every year. The same, next week when you move to approve the budget, he'll have the same tired PowerPoint presentation. He will try to play the heartstrings about how we still remain woefully underfunded. He said a few moments ago that according to the state's own calculations, we are still $4 million underfunded. But just a couple of years ago, we were $19 million. I think at one point we were $21 million underfunded. So I have to ask here, when are the taxpayers of Belleville going to finally get a break? All of this extra state funding from Trenton is supposed to help us. But at every turn, Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino find new clever ways to not only absorb those increases in state aid, but to ask for even more blood from the collective stone that is this community. The average household income in Belleville is just a little over $70,000 a year. The average property tax bill is now, with this increase and with what the town hall and the county are going to ask for this year, is going to put the average property tax bill over $11,000 on the median assessed home. So more than 1/7 of pre-tax income for the average Belleville household is going to go towards taxes. You're reaching a point now where the majority of Belleville families are not going to be able to continue living in this township.
Okay, Mr. Sheldon, do you have anything else on the budget?
Well, next week there will be the public hearing. Obviously, the reason why you scheduled this is that, as I pointed out with the DOE calendar, you cannot move to approve the budget until next Monday. So you had to necessarily reschedule. And the original April board meeting was scheduled for tonight. But when you realized that the DOE budget calendar wouldn't allow you to approve the budget tonight, out of necessity, you had to move the regular April meeting back 1 week to April 24th. So with the void here, you're going through this pretense of having a workshop and welcoming community participation. And, it's basically a done deal. Even if some of you take a principled stand, like a few of you did last December over the disposition, the conveyance of the disputed parcel plan on the School 1 block. Even if you do. Well, but even if you object, what's going to happen is that Mr. Egan will override the board and will impose this tax increase upon us. So once again, the board here is going to be relegated to nothing more than rubber stamps. Unfortunately, that's the reality. As long as we have a state monitor here who is a main ally of Dr. Tomko, a state monitor who deliberately brought in Mr. Palladino, where we have no role, we have no say over our own fates. Now, I am going to start a multimedia campaign.
Yes.
Asking Governor Murphy to directly intervene in this budget.
Thank you. Through the chair, can I just answer a few of those questions or comments so we can clear this up? I'll be very quick. Just so everyone's clear, the budget process that we're using this year is the same that we've used every year, and even when you were the finance chair, Mr. Sheldon. Exact same process, exact same meeting with building principals, looking at costs, getting projections. Nothing has changed. Before you were on the board, and now after, it's exactly the same. So if you, again, you're then part of that process. You're the one who actually created this workshop. So now this is perfect because it gives you time to bring some of this stuff up. But again, I tend not, and I usually don't like calling people out, but send me exact cuts you're talking about. You constantly, every year, talk about teacher salaries. Mr. Palladino has explained it to you 4 times where the salaries are and where the increases are. They're not the way you want them to seem, but that's not how the gap budgeting is. You send us something, say, you can cut 25 teachers. I want you to send specific stuff so I can see it. That's what the workshop's about. The board doesn't, this board specifically, Ms. Dattis as the chair, does an incredible job pinpointing specific things. That's what we've been doing for like a month now. And this week I know is going to be crazy. I probably won't even see my kids. But send us exact stuff, not just, again, hyperbole in my opinion. 5:30 p.m. start time, because you mentioned this on social media like 25 times this week. All of our hearings, work sessions, everything is 5:30. This is a work session. Only the meetings, the regular meetings are 7 p.m. That's been unless we change it because you wanted to when you were on the finance chair, but that's the way it should be. This is a work session right now. That's why we're able to talk like this. That's why no action's being taken. So if anything, we're being consistent and transparent. So I just needed to, because you make it seem like we're doing it because people are at work, or some of the board members are at work. They're here. So again, I have to say that I don't know, where the conspiracy theory comes in that hey, let's start at 5:30. I wish this whole place was filled. That's great. If anybody watching tonight has any idea for cuts, send them to me. Send them to Mr. Palladino. We'll definitely look at it. If we miss something, that's fine. It's tax money. It's your dollar. It's very simple. $4 million underfunded at 6.47% increase. If the board now decides to cut that in half and make cuts, we are now most likely going to be $8 million under adequacy. So here we are again. Now we're going to go back, right? It just makes sense. Again, that's a simple addition problem or subtraction problem. Okay? Just so you know, because you brought this up about the governor, when you talked to the governor, about him saying that, we're going to, try to meet everything, or the fair funding, or whatever it is. In order to get past that adequacy, right, we would have to raise taxes now $4 million. $1 million increase is $95. So if the board turned to me right now, if we had the ability to do this, which we don't because of bank cap, if the board turned to us right now and said, you know what, we want to listen to the governor, we want to be at adequacy, we want to be like all these other towns are at adequacy, we would have to raise your taxes $400 additional. $400 additional. Again, that's an addition-subtraction problem. That's not Mr. Palladino and I in a back room making stuff up with Mr. Egan, who apparently I'm related to, and all this other stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me, all right? There's no pleasure of me coming out to a town and saying, we're going to raise your taxes $230. Don't you think as a superintendent or as a board we want to come out and say, hey, no taxes this year, guys? We'd love to do that. Love to do that. But when I got here, we were in $4.7 million deficit. All the facilities were falling apart, and things were in bad shape. We're not there now, right? And now this is what happens, though. When you hit the top. So these are some of the things that are, are concerns. You mentioned again the 500. 1 second, ma'am. We mentioned again the $500,000 for the indoor training facility. Well, this right here is an expansion, new area. This was the idea when the board first had it for an expansion set. We put it in the budget for the technical review. I don't know if the board's going to want to keep it in. I would say I doubt it. It's probably not even going to be my recommendation. But this isn't to cover costs, and no one, including myself, has ever said anything was fully funded through state aid. You made that very clear from the first day we talked about preschool that it would not be 100% funded. Okay? Did we get $16 million or something like that? But I gotta be careful. Somewhere around that number? Yes, we did. Would that cover all the costs? No. Since day one we said that. It's not possible to do that. So again, we have to be very careful with what we said, which brings me now to the special needs students. We brought many students back here into those programs. We're loaded with students. We have tuition students. Okay? We are a growing community. People want to move to Belleville. They want to move here because of the schools and the facilities, because of how the town is starting to look. When you're coming here, little differences than when I first got here 8 years ago, right? For the benefit of that, and we have to deal with that. These special needs students that we are projecting, which we're being told are probably coming in from enrollments and whatnot, are students with needs that we can't handle. There are definitely students out there that we do not have programs for. Now, the bigger issue with that is if we get a student that moves in the middle of the year, we're not projecting for that. So that's scary and dangerous too. Which brings me to budgeting projections. Nobody projects a budget with exact numbers. It's impossible. They're rounded numbers, okay? And just to be very clear on the benefits number, it also includes Social Security, okay? And also, we keep mentioning this, this loan payment to the township, $2 million versus their 1.4 that they booked. We also have to pay interest on that. So there are a few things that maybe you're not aware of, Mr. Sheldon, which maybe we're not aware of, Mr. Sheldon, which is fine. And again, we can have those conversations. Maybe you could give us those questions. I can answer you in an email. That would be better instead of some of those things that you send that are disrespectful to me. But you could send me some questions and I can answer them. So that would be fine. So, but yeah, and just so you're aware too, because you asked this, the shared service agreement that we keep saying nobody knew about and we did it under the cloak of darkness was approved by the board in June of 2022. It's on the agenda, you can look it up online. June of 2022, the board was very aware of the shared service agreement. It was approved. 2 sets of lawyers and a bond counsel attorney put that together for the board. We explained it, and it's just going to be an incredible thing for this community, just as the indoor training facility is. I don't care what anybody says, that place is humming with kids, with community members. It's definitely a spotlight. We're making money back by some of these incredible sponsors. So we continue to do all we can with that. So, I don't know. And to be very clear, when you were on the board, just to kind of, make this very clear, you specifically as a finance chair cut not only the health benefit line, but also the legal reserve, which put us in trouble for 2 years past that. So let's just make that very clear. And that's all public record, so that's okay. But you probably have that on one of your recordings or something in the minutes. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tomko. And anyone else want to make a comment on the budget? Do you want to come up here to the podium? Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Tanisha Cruz, and my son was Nikia on my first. He came to school.
I'm sorry, did something happen in school with your son?
He just passed away. Sorry.
Oh. Do you want to talk to us afterwards about the budget?
No, I haven't. He was coming to school, and the way you guys used to put that he used to take speech, he never took speech here. So, maybe if you guys didn't put like he used to take speech, maybe you could have saved more money.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he passed away in college.
Okay.
He passed away, oh, you guys didn't know?
Can you, yeah. You know what, can you just stay for a few minutes after, and we'll talk to you? Yeah. Okay?
Yeah,
It's okay. You all right?
no, I think every time I talk about him, it just, he passed away, April 14. So he just, not too long. Yeah. So that's why he just passed 4 years. So he just made 4 years. So, oh yeah, I remember you. How you doing? So if you guys didn't put, like, every time I used to get a letter from you guys that you take speech, I was like, well, he didn't take speech. So maybe if you guys didn't put that in Social Security, maybe you would get less in the taxes. Mm-hmm. The only thing he used to take here, it was only the help from the helper that he used to be always with him. How you say that?
The paraprofessional.
There you go. Yeah. So maybe you guys will pay less taxes, and you didn't have to pay that much. And there you go. So that's why I said, Nikia, but you don't take that. He's like, no, mommy, I don't take that. So why every time he said you take that, and I think it was something else that said that he used to pay that too, and he didn't. So it was like 3 things, but the other thing was the helper that he had, and the transportation.
So you would get notice that he was
everything that
he was not.
yes. So that's it. Maybe that would like help you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Mhm.
We're very sorry.
Okay.
Yes, please. Yes, you can. Of course.
Whatever you, so that people can hear you.
You can come to the podium.
Dr. Tomko stated that for years and years the budget was because the people voted down the budget. He is absolutely correct that people voted down the budget. However, no cuts because the commission at that time, the council, and the Board of Ed were chummy. In fact, for many years, the superintendent of maintenance for the Belleville school system was a commissioner, so he never wanted to cut. But there was a big cut. The biggest cut when I was in office, $456,000. The Board of Ed sued us. We went to court, and the judge ruled every penny was justified. And he told the superintendent at times, he said, some of these things are actually illegal. The superintendent grabbed his tie and says, I know, Your Honor, but a lot of districts do it. And the judge says, I know, sir, but you got caught. So all those things, I mean, they were minuscule. It was a big, the citizens voted the budget down. So now it went to the commissioners at the time and then the council, and they made all this big stuff, and then you see the headline, oh, they agreed to cut $25,000. So Dr. Tomko knows definitely all those things, and he's a good man. He can put a lot of graphs up and all. Let him show where all those tremendous cuts were made. The citizens spoke, but the politicians took no action. There were pennies that were cut. Don't say it's hyperbole and by certain members. So you're accusing actually all these things about the residents are me and Mr. Sheldon. So please be accurate, and if you could prove those tons of money that were cut from the budgets all those years when you weren't here, and I'll go back, if you want, I could go back to the early 80s with budgets. So don't tell me all those stuff are cut. So you people better put the words hyperbole and misinformation on that particular issue came from the mouth of Dr. Tomko tonight. We did not have all those cuts.
To the chair, if I could respond to that, please, for 2 seconds. Again, $1 million in cuts over since 1980, if you could add up $1 million, is $95 extra to the taxes today, without compounding that, which I know you know how to do that. $95. When you take, even if it's 40 years, it doesn't matter. Once you take it out of if 1 year we need this money to survive, and then you cut something from it, not only do we have it for the next year to survive, you have to make it up twice as much. It's the compounded interest, same thing. That's just very basic math. So, the hyperbole example of exaggeration is exactly what was just occurred, Mr. Frantantoni. You were you were a commissioner here, wherever you were called at the time. This municipality definitely made cuts to these budgets. There is no way, and I don't have the number in my head, but when I first got here, it's the first thing I looked at, because to get into a $4.7 million deficit without making cuts like that, I'm not saying that you weren't justified in making cuts, but what I'm saying is call it for what it is. Again, $1 million today is $95 in tax money. So if in the last 25 years there was $1 million cut before we started going to the 2% cap, which is a great thing that Governor Christie did, thank God, that's take $95 off your taxes right now. That's exactly what happened if you kept it in there. But he didn't. And I'm not saying that the mayor and council was wrong at the time, but what I'm saying is this is the back effect. This is what happens. You could easily take a budget and say, all right, you don't need this person, you don't need this. Who needs a football team? Who needs that? It's very easy to do that. You can definitely find cuts. It's not saying you can't, but do you want to sustain programs? Do you want to, give the students and the families in this community what all communities should have? And that's why that's why we do it here. I know when you talk about it, it seems like there's fluff, but I don't even know how you can find any fluff in a budget that, even with the quote-unquote fluff that we're putting in here and the inflated lines, we're still $4 million under adequacy. I could see if we were over adequacy, then somebody could go, wait a second, we're over adequacy. We're not even close. We're $400 of your tax money, of your tax dollars away from being in adequacy. That's insane. It really is. And it's going to take a very long time to get to adequacy. We were doing so well because of the equalization aid. When Governor Murphy put the money in there, we were doing great. We went from 19, like Mr. Sheldon said, 20 million to 19 million to 16 million, all the way down. And Mr. Palladino and I, we were shaking our heads. I really thought I thought we would be close to 500,000 maybe, 400,000, all this extra money. We're still at $4 million. And that's not us coming in that number. That's the state saying, because of everybody else, what they have, Belleville needs $4 million more to be adequate. That's with 6.47. So when we do scrub this and chisel this back, because the board's going to make us do these cuts, which again, they should toe the line with us. That's going to be higher, and that's one of my slides that Mr. Sheldon talks about. There's no need for me to change my slides. That's how transparent it is. There's no fluff. This is the budget. This is the way it is. But again, even Mr. Francantoni, if you have anything specific, send it to us. I mean, you used to text me for stuff or call me. Send me specific stuff to cut, like specific lines, teachers, administrators. Go ahead, send it so we can look at it. I mean, that's what the workshop's for. Thank you.
I have 30 seconds as well to respond to something that Dr. Tomko said about my tenure as chair of the Finance Committee. I promise to keep you 30 seconds. When I chaired the Finance Committee in 2019, ostensibly the only real cut that was made in the budget, and initially Dr. Tomko wanted a $200 increase that year, buried in the minutia of the budget that year was a mysterious line item with a $1 million number next to it, with the title Real Estate Acquisition. So Mr. Grolleman, who was president of the board at that time, and myself as chair, we demanded that that be removed. That was essentially the major cut made to the budget in 2019, which in itself saved the average homeowner $100 in extra taxes. But that was a harbinger of what was going to happen as soon as Mr. Melnum seated the Better Belleville ticket, and then starting in January 2020, the pre-K expansion and everything else, all the real estate acquisitions got underway. But that was the effective cut in 2019, a $1 million removal for real estate acquisitions.
Which you were aware of because you're on the board.
I was aware of, yeah, because I
Finance chair. You told me.
Does anyone else have any comments in the audience?
You told me to put it.
Can I speak?
I appreciate you all coming tonight. I am going to ask the board members now if they, again, this is a workshop, so if you would like to make some comments and have this healthy dialogue, okay? Right, Mr. Trustee Velez.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Again, I just want to extend our condolences to you, and thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you. You're a beautiful person. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Getting back to the budget, in regards to the athletic facility, athletic opportunity is tied into education, because a child's ability to learn is intrinsically linked with their ability to socialize and to better themselves as a human being. And they are able to do that through healthy outlets such as athletics opportunities. And it is important that when we look at opportunity, that we remember that the children in Belleville for so many years did not have access to even basic necessities when it comes to athletic opportunity. So yes, while I understand that there are financial concerns which are fair and we should look into because we have a fiduciary responsibility on this board. Oh, thank you, former Trustee Barrera, fixing my my audio over here. Getting back, we do have a fiduciary responsibility a responsibility to the taxpayers. And we have to look at every dime, we have to look at every nickel, everything we spend on this board, but we also have to remember and balance that concern and that responsibility with our jobs here to promote the progression of the educational opportunities for our children and our students here. And I think it's important that we remember where we were and then look back at where we are now and really see the difference. Now, in regards to an expansion, I do think we really seriously need to look at that, because $500,000 is a lot to ask for, especially during these very tough times. There are so many working families right now who are being just pressured by this high taxes. So we really need to look at that. But again, we have to look at as well where we were and look at where we are now and really balance those concerns. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Trustee Velez. Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Vice President, I would like to speak. Thank you. Dear trustees, I understand we are $4 million underfunded here in the Belleville Public School System, as Dr. Tonko did state today. I was elected back in November 2017, and I recall in 2018 when I started my volunteer position up here, it was said we were $18 million underfunded. And obviously we are reaching the goal of servicing our school district a lot better, if that's, so that needs to be stated, and thank you to Dr. Tonko for moving our school district forward that way. But please do not forget that the Belleville financial demographics, the same families that, and community members who are paying these taxes have to debate between paying their rent, their food, etc. And I say etc. because there is etc., right? But that etc. is the norm, you know, costs of living, food, and those same households are the ones that are going to have this increase. As a mom, as a parent, as a taxpayer, as a homeowner, I definitely do support our school district and being able to give the children everything afforded to them. But when I state that, I always talk about necessities, because we have to put a necessity before a luxury. And right now, we need to really trim down this budget, and with time, we can do extras. We have to find a better way. I mentioned 2 items today. I know that Mr. Velez mentioned the facility, and it's not about removing that facility, and it's not about taking away what we have already done. The drone is something that is not there. The ROTC is something that is not there. So it's not about taking away what we've already done. It's about expanding. I know that it was said throughout the year that grants was going to be our focus. We have someone doing that. I'm sure that there's technology, STEM, different grants out there that we really need to look at. There's a lot out there. I know that that's gonna do a lot. That's gonna be a lot of legwork, but I ask if we can have that done. So, Dr. Tonko, you stated today to anybody let you know where we can cut, where we can. So we're not cutting. It's just that we're not going to, in my opinion, expand that facility just yet. Keyword, just keyword, yeah, right? So we need to, I would love to go tomorrow and buy a BMW. I would love to go there right now, but I really can't. I would like to, as I stated before, install that pool. I just can't yet. But do I have means of transportation? Absolutely. Do I have a home, a warm home, food on the table? Yes. So I'm just talking about the necessities. And with the budgets from the prior years, I've never seen, and I see Mr. Barrera in the, in the public, and I would love for him to keep me, from lying. I've never seen a budget of over $256, even when you were around. So we are definitely overreaching right now. And I do want to thank the Finance Committee in advance for doing a great job. I know Nikki definitely is a mom like me, and she's definitely doing her job and her due diligence. So I do look forward to that work next Monday. I do look forward to it. I trust her to do right by our kids, by our community, by our parents. Everybody up here does that. The only reason I say that with Nikki is because she's in the Finance Committee. So I'm not singling anything out. Everybody here would not be here if they did not care. I've known every single trustee up here as a parent, out in the community, and we all work hard and we all do what we can do to the best of our ability to service not just our kids, but our whole community. I personally love our community and our children, and as I stated before, if I could give $1 million, I would. But I just want to make sure that we are within our means. And I'm a little scared. I have a little fear here because of the prior vote, and I have to mention it. I know that it was stated, not to mention our School 1 property, but it's reality. I can't erase the past. I can only hope for the future and work for the future. So right now we're making the decisions for the future, and if come Monday, it's a 4-3 vote, like it was in the past, I have the fear that Mr. Egan, our state monitor, will overturn that. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I love to focus on the future because we are focused on the future all the time. At the same time, I'm living the present. So I'm up here, and like I stated, I trust our Finance Committee. I trust everyone here that we are doing our due diligence and our job. But we definitely, I implore, if you could please, Dr. Tomko, please trim this budget. We need to, as you stated before, we're doing more with less, and I wish we could do more and more and more. But the pockets don't let me do more right now. I remember back in the day, because I've lived in Belleville over 32 years, I would go grocery shopping with $200 and my whole fridge was full, completely. Now I go and it's $100 and it's like 3.5 days, barely meeting. So, barely meeting that 200. So as a parent, I know the community wants to help. The community wants to help. And thank you for, in the past, we passed the referendum. That was, I advocated for that. I did, because we needed our schools to be safe. We needed that. So we're in debt 25 years for that. 5 years down, 20 more to go. But we have to meet our means. I don't know where Mr. Egan lives, but he does not know the pockets of Belleville. That's the truth. If he gets offended, I don't mean to be offensive. It's the truth. So if he overturns anything on Monday, I'm really going to be upset, because I'm done being nice. I'm done trying to be up here doing my job, and someone can just do that when they're not living here, when they're not suffering the consequences here. So I'm not happy with that. Now, if you're in it with me and we're trying to get ourselves out and trying to make sure our kids have everything, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. But there's no middle ground where we can meet halfway. And that's what I want. I want to meet halfway. Not the whole way, because my pocketbook does not allow me to. Not because I don't want to. So I don't know how much more to say it. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible, as professional as possible. I want to thank my trustees here in advance for all their hard work. I love working with you guys. I love our ideas. I love how we've been moving our school district forward. And I hope that we can meet halfway on this budget at least. Because the whole way, I'm just, it's gonna come to a point where I might sell my house and move myself. Because the same amount of money I'm spending up here, I can have 10 acres in North Carolina. My cousins live down there, so it's not a lie, it's the truth. With what I pay up here, I would have 10 acres in North Carolina. So I'm telling you, it does not fit my pocket. So I know how the public feels. We have to help our kids, do right by our kids, do everything for our kids, but we have to just do it in strides. That's all. Let's just do this, but let's do this in strides. And I thank you in advance for all your hard work, Dr. Tanko, also. I know how innovative you are, and I know, trust me, if someday I hit that lottery, the school district is where I would be calling and saying, hi, I don't know who the superintendent is, because it's not gonna happen, hopefully, I pray, but I'll call and I'll say, can I donate? Okay? Same thing to the community. If you can donate, help us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jocko. Any other board trustees have any comments they would like to make about the budget? No? All right, hearing none. Oh. I was just advised that Mrs. Jody Velez is here. Welcome, Mrs. Jody Velez. This is our budget workshop for 2023-2024. I don't know how much you heard, or if you wanted to say good evening to everyone. You don't have to. Okay. All right. Then I'm just going to wrap this up. This is a thing that's done annually. It's a budget workshop. I want to thank Dr. Tomko and Mr. Palladino for putting together the categories that you see behind us. This helps us get it organized, and in the next couple of days we will continue to provide input to Dr. Tomko. The Finance Committee has been working very hard. The Negotiations Committee is also an intricate part of this budget and is working very hard. There are a lot of unknowns when you're putting together a budget, and this makes it very difficult. You want to err with caution, obviously, in some of the categories. The health benefits is, everybody is dealing with an increase in the cost of health benefits. I never like to spill my personal, what's happened to me, but the way I got my health benefit increase and the way my company handled it was they gave me a confidential letter and said, this is your health increase and this is how much your salary is going down. So nobody ever wants to hear that, but that's just, we all have a connection to what's really happening out there. So we're all very mindful of looking at a budget and knowing what we can and what we can't do. The other area that we're being very cautious with is contracts. And what if something does break? So I don't know how many people know about the processes that you have to go through when you're working as either in the Board of Education, municipal, or government. You're bound to having to get, RFPs, bids for projects, 3 quotes for project. There's thresholds. Your contractors have to have certifications. They have to be a public works certified, a business registration, insurance documents. And, just knowing that someone in the audience has a business and is in construction, what that really does to folks is, you really get very inflated costs for things that you feel are so simple to fix. And unfortunately, that's what you have to do, because that's what you're bound to do, because that keeps it on a level playing field. Prevailing wage. I'm sure I don't have to tell Mr. Palladino about having to have prevailing wage. And again, that's personally, I experienced that at work too. What I think is going to be something that's going to be so simple to fix or to get painted comes in at such an inflated cost. And you can't even use the poor businessman that could do the job and probably could do it very well, but because they don't have the paperwork or the certifications, they are not even allowed to do that. So again, when you're looking at the budgets and having to deal with all of these ups and downs, education of the students, the teachers, making sure they're get their professional development, there's just a lot of different factors. So we appreciate you coming out. For those that couldn't come out and are listening to the budget workshop, we appreciate and, hope that you understand it and that we are very sympathetic to this, and every year we will be. So, with that said, I think we close the meeting with a motion. Okay, so do I have a motion to close tonight's meeting?
Motion.
Motion by Frank, and a second motion?
Second.
Trustee Velez, and second by Trustee Giacco. Mr. Palladino? All in favor? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone.